A new national economic model isn't the kind of topic you might expect to draw crowds. But Malaysians have turned out in numbers and offered plenty of feedback during their government's unprecedented roadshows to help chart the country's future economic direction. This session looked at how best and how fast to cut the billions of dollars the government spends each year subsidizing petrol, road tolls and a range of foods including sugar.
Reducing the subsidy is a good idea, but we need to know whether the marginalized groups have been taken care or not.
Negative impacts in the long run.
It was public feedback like this, coupled with input from a wide range of specialists, that Prime Minister Najib Razak and his economic team weighed up before introducing the 10th Malaysia 5-year plan. Their goal:
to achieve our vision to become a high-income, developed country by 2020.
To achieve that goal, the government says Malaysia needs to sustain average annual growth of some 6% and to see private investment surge by almost 13% a year, compared to just 2% annually over the past 5 years.
But any standard is ambitious. But we know it is. And that is why the 10 Malaysia plan has come up with so many propositions. We really have to open up, we have to change, we have to liberalize, we have to improve our quality of education.
Currently, less than a quarter of Malaysians have tertiary education, far too low a level to hope to meet the new economic model's goal of creating an innovation and productivity-driven country with a strong services sector. To try to address that, the government will nearly double the slice of its development budget that will be spent on improving human skills.
I think the policies that have been enunciated in the new economic model are basically very broad-based, encompassing, as well as holistic. Now, the key issue now, of course, as everyone knows, is actually lies in the implementation, the execution part of it.
To try to slash red tape and ensure its goals are met, the government has set performance targets for ministries, as well as for state-controlled companies. It's also overhauling a policy long seen as an impediment to private investment and a contributor to the country's serious brain drain, the affirmative action policy, favouring the majority ethnic Malays and other indigenous groups.
The 40-year-old policy has helped considerably narrow the economic gap between Malays and non-Malays, especially the ethnic Chinese, but it's also been prone to abuse, far too often enriching the politically well-connected.
The government is still aiming to boost the share of the economy owned by Malays and other indigenous groups, but it's shifting from affirmative action rigidly based on race to being based on need.
The affirmative action will continue, but will be targeted towards anybody under any Malaysian under the sun, is the way it was phrased in the document. And I think that's key. You target the bottom 40% of the income bracket of the population, but it doesn't matter whether that 40% is Chinese, Indian or Malay.
That approach is meeting with resistance from conservative Malays, including within Najib's own party. People who fear an erosion of Malay political supremacy and loss of the financial perks.
They are insecure and they are resisting it for all kinds of reasons. They may use the racial card, the religious card, whatever. And he must be strong enough and people must be brave enough to support him, because the silent majority support him. It's his political vested interest that many of them don't support him.
A former senior civil servant under Mahathir Mohamad, Navaratnam was also the local head of the anti-corruption watchdog Transparency International. He says that the current administration is striving to undo problems that built up during Mahathir's 22 years in power.
A lot of the institutions weakened or were weakened. Corruption grew. Education system suffered. Meritocracy declined. I think Najib must get the credit for being bold and courageous in bringing about or working towards a transformation in society.
Navaratnam is also encouraged by what he sees as a new willingness to admit to and confront the failings of the past. The Prime Minister's economic advisors say it has to be done.
We cannot afford to be squeezed out by the new countries, Vietnam, Indonesia. We have to work ourselves hard and get ourselves out of this middle income trap. And that's not easy. But the government has a stomach, has a steel, if you will, to see it through. Because we know that there is no choice, really.
Aiming to double per capita income in a decade is a huge ask, and one that will entail some pain.
It's a dilemma. I know they're in a hurry and they've declared it with their target for this increase in private sector investment, in my view. But they don't like losing votes either.
But Ambrose and others feel the goal of reaching developed status by 2020 or thereabouts is attainable if, albeit a big if, the government does manage to drive through the ambitious measures spelled out in the 10th Malaysia Plan.